How's it going, guys? Hope you guys having a great week. So I'm back again. It's that time of the month again, guys. So it's time to talk about the top 5 game releases coming out in May 2019. Now I'm going to do these in chronological order as always. Kicking it off today, the first game coming out in May that I'm super interested in is called A Plague Tale: Innocence. This game is set for release on the 14th of May and it will be available on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One and PC. It is developed by Asobo Studios and it is basically an action survival stealth puzzle game. This game looks super interesting. It actually follows the story of two siblings, Amicia and Hugo, and it is set during the 100-year war and during the Black Death. You control Amicia and you are basically escorting Hugo and on the run from a band of murderous English knights known as the Inquisition, and they're basically chasing you down because they want to capture Hugo. Hugo has a sickness and he's had it ever since he was born, but something about the sickness is a mystery around it. It's quite important and they seem to have kind of an idea of what's causing the Black Death and also an understanding of the rats that exist in the world. So I love the style of this game. It looks absolutely incredible. You have to deal with these thousands of hordes of rats which hide and scurry around in the dark. They will basically devour anything in their sight. Now they are afraid of light, so you have to use puzzle solving elements to try to create areas of light and to distract these rats and use these rats in a way to take out enemy knights, because you are of course a 15-year-old child. You're not very strong, you can't really fight for yourself, so it's about surviving this incredibly harsh looking world and sort of looking after your brother and exploring the mystery of where these rats have come from and what's going on. It just looks really interesting. I love the art style, I love the atmosphere, and I'm very much interested in this game. It looks really good. The second game coming out is Rage 2, which is coming out on May the 14th. It will be available on PlayStation 4, Xbox One and PC. This is actually a joint project between ID Software, who are most famous for their Doom series, and Avalanche Studios, which is of course the developers behind the Just Cause series. It is an open world first person shooter. It is a purely single player experience, so there will be no multiplayer, and the game acts as a sequel to 2011's Rage. Now I myself have not played the original Rage game, so I don't really know much about it, and I know a lot of people were sort of going, why? Is there a demand for this? But it looks like the developers are wanting to really show off what the original Rage could have been and all these ideas that they had for it as this huge open world area, but they were perhaps held back by the technology at that time. So it's set in a post-apocalyptic world. It is basically, it looks like Mad Max, but it's way more colorful in terms of characters and the art style. You basically assume control of the last ranger called Walker, and it takes place about 30 years after the original game's events. So there is a cast of both new and existing characters as well. You will be able to customize Walker, so you can customize either your gender, skills and attire, but what looks really good is the gameplay. I've seen some gameplay of this and it looks incredible. It definitely, the gunplay, the weapons, the aggressive style of combat, how smooth the movement is and how rapid and fast and aggressive the combat is, and the different abilities and powers that you have. It definitely reminds me heavily of Doom, and it looks like it's got very much a feel of Doom, which will be really good. And then of course we have the open world element. You will be able to commandeer different vehicles in the world, so there will be jeeps or buggies that you can drive around, and there's like kind of like a hovercraft type transport that you can use as well. But it looks really fun. It just looks fun and enjoyable, and hopefully it'll have a really interesting story and a really interesting cast as well. But yeah, I'm definitely interested in Rage 2. The third game coming out is Team Sonic Racing. This is due for release on May the 21st, and it will be available on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, the Nintendo Switch and the PC. This game is of course developed by Sumo Digital, and they're the team that brought us the Sonic and Sega All-Stars racing game. So they have a lot of history, a lot of experience when it comes to doing sort of kart racing style games. There are 15 playable characters from the Sonic universe. There will also be 21 tracks that you can drive through and play on across 7 different zones. The way in which this game is a little bit different to other kart racing games though is it focuses more on teams and teamwork. So it is going to focus on that cooperative play, and it's not about coming first place, but it's more about how you play as a team and the efficiency of your play as a team. So you can give items and boosts to your teammates to help boost them at particular points in the race. So that's really, really interesting to look at. But I love the art style of it. It looks really, really fun. I haven't played any of the Sonic racing games, but I'm a big fan of Mario Kart and these styles of racing games. So it looks really fun and interesting to sort of tackle and have a go at. The 4th game coming out is Observation. This is coming out on the 21st of May, and it will be available on the PlayStation 4 and PC. This is developed by No Code and is of course published by Devolver Digital. Now we got to see a story trailer for this in PlayStation's State of Play. It's basically an adventure horror simulator. It's a sci-fi thriller set on a space station, and the general goal of it is to uncover what happened to Dr. Emma Fisher and her crew. So Dr. Fisher seems to be the only survivor or existing astronaut on the station, but what's really interesting about this game, and sounds incredible, is the fact that the story is told actually through the lens of the station's artificial intelligence, Sam, and that we will actually be operating the station's AI, and we'll be operating the station's control systems, including cameras and tools to both assist Emma and investigate to see what has happened. So it sounds really interesting, this whole idea of controlling an AI and playing the game from the perspective of an AI instead of the perspective of like a human character is really interesting for me, and it just sounds really fun, and it's definitely a game I'm interested in checking out. The 5th game coming out is Total War 3 Kingdoms. That's set for release on the 23rd of May, and it's going to be available on the PC. This is of course by Creative Assembly, and for those of you who don't know, the Total War series has been going a very long time. This is actually the 12th mainline entry, and it's a turn-based strategy real-time tactics style game. Now I have always enjoyed the Total War games. I played a lot of them in my younger years. I think the last Total War game I actually played was Total War Rome, I think was what I played, and I really, really enjoyed it. I love any game set in historical periods. I love strategy games. I love tactics, and the idea of this game is exciting for me. The game is set at the beginning of 190 AD, and this is where the once glorious Han Dynasty is on the verge of collapse. It's basically set during the Three Kingdoms era of Chinese history, incredibly famous period of history in China. The new Emperor Xian, who's only aged 8, very young, is basically manipulated by the warlord Dong Shuo. I don't know if I said that right. And new warlords rise and form alliances to start a campaign against Dong Zhuo. So players will basically control one of the game's 12 factions, and their goal will be to eliminate the other factions, unify China, and of course become its sole ruler. Factions are also led by warlords, including some very famous ones like, I don't know if I'm going to say this right, but Cao, Liu Bei, and Sun Jian. The siege battles will be returning, so you'll be able to control both infantry and cavalry, and players can actually deploy up to 12 generals into the battlefield at any one given time. These generals can actually be controlled separately from their troops, and they are able to engage in 1v1 duels with other generals in the enemy forces. They have also introduced an interesting concept at a new system called Jiangxi, which is basically where each general forms social connections and relationships. This whole idea of obligations, reciprocity and trust. So you will build relationships up between different generals, and obviously they have their own personalities, their own interests, their own needs, and if you don't tailor to this, it can have very definite repercussions for players. There are going to be 2 game modes there. So we will have romance, which is based on the novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms. In this version of the game, the generals are effectively gifted superhuman style characters with superhuman strength and abilities. And the second mode that we have is called Records, which is based on the records of the Three Kingdoms. It's a more historically accurate version of the events, so you can choose to play one or the other depending on obviously what you prefer. So those are the 5 sort of key games coming out in May that I'm very interested in. There is an honourable mention I do want to include on here. So there is another game coming out which I learned about, which sounds really interesting, which is called Close to the Sun. This is actually set for release tomorrow on May the 1st, and it's going to be available on the PC exclusively to start with, and then in the 3rd quarter of this year it's set to come out on the console. It is basically a survival stealth game developed by Storm in a Teacup, and it looks like it's inspired heavily by BioShock. We can definitely see that in the setting and the world and the art style. It's set in an alternative history in 1899 where Nikola Tesla has become incredibly successful and has actually built a huge scientific ship known as Helios, kind of like Rapture, and players will basically control Rose, a journalist who is investigating the ship and the events surrounding the ship when she receives a very suspicious letter from her sister, who is a researcher on board the Helios, and something pretty terrible, pretty devastating, pretty dark has happened on board the ship, involving technology and technology going too far and the repercussions of that. So your job is basically to investigate what actually happens. It's going to have a lot of stealth elements in it. Now, you don't have any weapons or any abilities. That's where it differs from BioShock. So you will have to creep and stealth your way, and if you get into a pickle, you'll have to kind of run away and flee and hide. So that's going to create a lot of tension when it comes to playing the game. So yeah, Close to the Sun sounds really interesting, so of course I wanted to include it in here. So those are just some of the titles coming out in May this year that look really interesting, that have me excited. Which games are you looking forward to playing in May? If I've missed any titles, please let me know in the comment section below if there's anything I haven't included in this list, because it's only the things I'm interested in. It's not an exhaustive list, but let me know if I have missed out anything. Let me know what you're looking forward to, and I hope you found this video interesting, informative, and maybe introduce you to some new games that you didn't know about. But anyway, hope you guys are having a great week. Of course, take care, and as always, happy gaming. Bye guys.